Hello, everyone, and happy Friday out there. So glad to be joining you once again here on Mom at Home for another live episode. Today, another exciting day. Today's guest, very, very special guest, musician, singer, songwriter, violinist, activist, and generally just, working towards the public good. Scarlet Rivera is joining us today, and I'm going to let her talk about all her career with Mr. Bill. But she's very, very well known for getting her start off in a very amazing way with an artist you may recognize, Mr. Bob Dylan. And so after that, her career has just been one upward trajectory, writing music, releasing albums, and then again, being a wonderful advocate for climate and so much more. So let's welcome our guests today, Scarlet and Mr. Bill. How is everyone doing? Welcome to Mom at Home. I'm so glad to see everyone.
Glad to be here.
All right.
Scarlet, we're glad to have you here. Thank you for being our guest today. And let me make sure I thank Jim Cowan also. Jim brought us Albert Lee during Believe in Music Week, and today he brought us Scarlet Rivera. So Scarlet, welcome. And I'm going to start out with a sentence that I read in your bio as I was sort of perusing all the information about your huge, illustrious career. Here it is. Scarlet Rivera burned a hole in the fabric of rock history. Then it goes on to talk about your diverse stylistic approach. So 3 words I want to throw at you: pioneer, revolutionary, or pushing the envelope. What do you think best describes the way you approach playing the violin?
Well, definitely pioneer, because I was one of the earliest to take the violin into mainstream music, and up to that point, it was considered a sweetener, like in Frank Sinatra songs or, Tony Bennett songs. It was a string section and the parts were written. You didn't play you didn't make stuff up, you weren't allowed to do that. And nor was, any violinist considered like on the level of a lead guitarist. So, but I saw myself aiming for the lead guitar and to replace violin, a lead guitarist with violin. And I guess I did.
Well, that's absolutely a pioneer. And I would also say revolutionary as well, because as you said, you're one of the first to sort of jump into that way of playing violin in popular music, in rock music. And I'd say all 3. You also were pushing the envelope with that.
For sure.
Oh, you were trained as a classical violinist. Did you, at a certain point, though, come up with a game plan then to stretch those preconceived boundaries of what should or shouldn't?
No, it was very organic how it happened. It just happened over a period of time. And I feel like I was an activist my whole life, even as a child. I just had this innate sense of what I believed was right, wrong, things that, I didn't want to be force-fed what to believe and what not to believe. And so, like fit into society's box, which I was absolutely geared towards fitting into that box or else. And then Dylan came along, and I heard those words in high school, and they were like drops of water in a desert, and that's kind of kicked off a few things.
So you already had this sort of pushing the envelope vibe going on, and then hearing Dylan come along really sort of reinforced that with you. And I love that. I didn't want to be force-fed what to believe or what not to believe. You really followed your own voice, which is so important for every music, really. Now, you started out with piano lessons at age 6, but then switched over to violin around age 7. And you made the comment that you just knew it was the instrument for you. How did you know that at such a young age?
I just had a natural, took to it naturally. And I started memorizing everything that I heard. I realized soon that I would have perfect pitch at it was very easy for me to memorize things. And to kind of navigate the violin seemed to be relatively easy.
So it wasn't like stepping onto a foreign playing field and really having no idea where you were until you were pushed in a direction. Uh, would, did that apply to bowing technique?
Oh no.
So that,
Yeah.
still
Well,
that.
many years, jumping many years later, even after Bob Dylan, I met to jump around time wise, I met my really ultimate violin teacher who broke many bad habits, such as bad bowing. That's, so it's been a lifelong pursuit of improving my technique all the time.
And you know what, Scarlett, you just spoke for every musician on the planet. It really is a lifelong endeavor. I don't think any musician would ever say, "Here I am." It's perfect,
Yeah.
right? We're always sort of reaching for that next level.
Yeah.
Now, you said you started to just play what you were hearing, so obviously you were playing by ear right off the bat. Um,
No, but I had violin lessons immediately,
right, but still, you were hearing things and playing them,
Oh,
correct?
yes, yes.
Yeah. So now, with the piano lessons under your belt, as you started to improvise, do you think those lessons helped you with how you were hearing chords, melodies, and harmony, things that you all put into play when you improvise?
No, not at all. That was purely innate, something internal. Because I really, to this day, I'm not good with theory. I didn't really ever excel in theory lessons, but I have a natural ability to hear chords instantly, and know what to play and what not to play.
What what will fit with them? Uh,
Absolutely.
I didn't write it down here, but I know in your bio it also talked about you listening to one of the great jazz players, or probably several of them. And would you agree that what you added to your knowledge base by listening to them is that there aren't necessarily any wrong notes per se? It's more a matter of what you're playing and feeling and hearing at the time.
Well, there are bad notes that if you can choose, for sure. But playing with jazz tightens the window of what you know to be acceptable or not. I mean, you can push a little bit of dissonance, but as long as it's not flat out like wrong.
Okay, that's when they stop rolling tape and say, "We're going to roll back about 20 seconds and have you take another go at that." Huh? So now you were obviously playing then, studying, playing by ear, and that eventually led you to studies at universities and playing with their orchestras. Looks as though you went to Southern Illinois University and then is it Mann Conservatory?
Manus Conservatory.
Thank you for the correction. Manus Conservatory in New York. At the same time, you're listening to John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, the Doors, Janis Joplin, King Crimson. Talk about musical diversity. There must have been a bit of a balancing act for you there. Yes. How did you maintain that?
Well, I learned early on not to talk about non-classical music in a classical world. The classical world, for those that don't know it, is extremely elitist. And if you're a violinist, you are on top of the heap because that is considered the ultimate prize, is to be in the violin section. So they're very snobby about anybody else or anything else. And so, but that really didn't sit well with me. I am not a musical snob, and I did not look down on other kinds of music. And but I learned not to talk about that kind of music until I had to tell them I was leaving for a tour with that kind of music.
I love the I love the comment. We'll get to in a couple of minutes when you told your teacher. And Scarlett, that your attitude has to have served you well because, as you know, and can tell anybody who's made their way in the what you call the professional music world, be it recording, be it touring, you've got to be able to catch whatever fly balls are thrown at you. If it's classical, if it's pop, rock, Celtic, which we'll have you demonstrate here in just a bit. So that has to have served you well. And I mean, I applaud you for that. So you weren't necessarily pulled in one direction over the other. You loved it all.
Yep.
You knew where to pick your battles. Don't tell the first violinist that you're going out and playing with John Mayall later on. Well, I see you're holding your violin with you, and we have talked about some diverse styles. So would you maybe share a few of those with us? Let us hear the differences.
Well, I've come to really love Celtic music, even, and I've built up quite a repertoire of traditional, but I've also written a whole bunch of original Celtic music. So, but for the moment, how about if I play one of the traditional ones called Red-Haired Boy, which I kind of throw in a Americana twist in how I play it.
Yeah, nice.
Can't see my feet from where you are, but they were definitely going. And that's a beautiful melody, Red-Haired Boy. I love that song. So you would call that a Celtic with a bit of an Americana twist?
Yes.
All right.
I could play another Celtic one if you want it's not supposed to have a Celtic Americana twist, but if I throw a little bit of it in there, you will hear how that song influenced later Americana styles, which is Over the Sea to Skye, which is a real, like the classic one. I think it was even in Titanic.
Yeah.
I love it. Could sit and listen to that all day long. Now, when we were talking earlier, Scarlett, you mentioned that you have an electric 5-string violin. I know you don't have it with you at the moment, but I would like to kind of talk about the difference between the 4 and the 5-string, and also ask you if there's any sort of muscle memory adjustment you have to do when moving from the 4-string to the 5-string.
Oh yeah, I bought my 5-string like many years ago, 20 years ago plus, from Ned Steinberger direct. Actually, my Steinberger 5-string, which is made out of black graphite, by the way, and it's a stick instrument. It's like a stick bass. It was looked like a stick violin, and the tuning was not up here on the top. It was at the bottom. But he really was a master of instrument making. So because the sound of it was wonderful, and it had equal tones on all the strings. And I've tried other 5-string violins too, and when you got to the difference between the C and the G, it would be either too, fuzzy or too bassy, and the top too tinny. But he equalized all the tonalities really very well. So his 5-string Steinberger was a really great instrument. I took it on the road with the Indigo Girls in Europe, and did a lot of big tours with it.
So with that additional 5th string, you say that's a C.
A C, yeah.
Low G. So essentially then you've got 2 instruments rolled into one, right? You've got the range of the viola and the violin all together.
Yeah, matter of fact, I did a lot of recording sessions with producers, and I would say, you know what, I got a viola part to go under this particular song. My other part is like a violin part. I can lay down a viola part, and I only played a counterpoint on the G and the C.
Hmm.
Okay. That's a fascinating little tip for owners of string violins. I do have a question, Scarlett, from one of our volunteers, Joe Rogers. And he asks, I have always wondered about playing a fretless instrument. Is there a way to know where to play the right note? In other words, share the magic with Joe.
It's 100% muscle memory.
Hmm.
And especially with a tiny instrument, I deal with this with my students all the time. I try to also encourage their use of their ear. Like if you are off a fraction, hear it and make the adjustment right away. And if you make a mistake in a chart, let's say, and the note is wrong and the tone is wrong, if you do it a second time or third time, you will actually memorize it wrong. So, self-correction and doing things slow and methodical and getting that muscle memory and lots of scales. I mean, I think a lot of people think, oh, scales are boring, but they help reinforce the foundation of where you can go off later. But if your scales are not in tune, nothing else will be either.
Right. Okay. That's great advice. And I had never really thought of it that way, but yes, you play it 2 or 3 times incorrectly, your muscles have memorized that. Now you've created more work for yourself to have to go back and relearn that, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Great question, Joe. Thank you for that and great answer. So we've talked about, as you said, you kind of keep quiet around the classical groups when you want to talk about the pop music. And in your bio, it mentioned a gentleman from the Mozart Kroll Quartet as being horrified when you told him you were going on the road with Bob Dylan. Now, that was back when you were in college, I believe. Do you think the same holds true today in 2021? There's still, yeah.
I would assume, I think it's a little bit more open. I really do, because there have been a lot of classical crossovers, like, with Yo-Yo Ma and other, illustrious players that have validated our side of the fence. So I think that the highbrow world has come to understand that there's plenty of virtuosity and brilliance in non-classical music.
Boy, you're just laying down some great quotes today. Plenty of virtuosity in did you say non-classical music?
Yeah.
Yeah. And absolutely true. One of our guests a while back was Wu Man, and she plays the pipa, and she's got some videos that you can find where she's playing with Yo-Yo Ma. So there's a completely different take on the cello in sort of a traditional Chinese music. Why not, right? It can all cross.
Totally.
Yeah. I mean, that's what gave us, jazz rock fusion, country rock. If people had said, nope, I only play this, a whole lot of musics might not have come to be. Matter of fact, another funny thing I read as I was researching other violinists such as yourself, I mean, Marc O'Connor, for instance, David LaFlamme from It's a Beautiful Day, one of my favorite bands back in the 60s and 70s. He actually changed his given name, which was Gary Posey, to David LaFlamme when he was going to play this pop music with It's a Beautiful Day. And it said he adopted his rock persona stage name to protect his orchestral reputation. So in case anybody wasn't sure that's the real deal, that is in fact the real deal. So what do you say to other musicians? And I respect people who say, you know what, I play country, I play classical, I play pop. That's what I do. But many, such as yourself, want to explore it all. And what advice would you give to other musicians who come to you and say, I'm afraid to do this, what should I do?
Oh my gosh. You know what? I teach students, by the way, from 7 years old up. And my lessons right off the bat, I teach them in the very same lesson. I teach them a little classical foundation. I teach them some very simple Americana, like Home, Home on the Range kind of thing. And I throw in Celtic, like a bluegrassy, not bluegrass, but like old timey music, which is very simple as well. So I cover about three, sometimes even throw in a little jazz or preliminary jazz on early lessons, under 10 years old.
Wow.
So I get my students accustomed to hearing and being able to go out in the world and do multiple styles.
Able and not afraid to.
And not afraid.
As you were talking just now, Scarlett, you reminded me of another one of my favorites from some time ago, Claude Bolling, of course, who put out a series of classical/jazz infused albums. Suite for flute and jazz piano comes to mind. And he did one, I believe, with violin and also another one with guitar. So he was taking a classical style, but jazzing it up. And those albums actually were very successful. They did a good job of sort of fusing these worlds and opening that up to people. A couple of more questions, then I want to talk about that fateful afternoon that occurred for you. So another volunteer, Brian Donaldson, asks two questions. And boy, here's another name I haven't seen in a while. Have you ever had the chance? The first one, yes. Second one, no. Have you ever had the chance to play with Jean-Luc Ponty or Papa John Creech?
No, I really. The last thing I wanted to do was sit in with Jean-Luc Ponty. No, our styles were diametrically opposite. He can do what he does, and I do what I do.
Okay. And then Brian also asks if you could tell us about the pickups on your violin that we're seeing here.
This is a Fishman pickup. And I have Fishman amp and Fishman everything, so at the moment.
Yeah.
Oh. And as far as violin players go, I have sat in with some, though. I sat in with Vassar Clements many years ago, who was a genius country fiddler. And along the way, I met a Texan one named Gatemouth Brown.
Wow, okay.
So
awesome.
I have
great people to have played with. So let's move on to that fateful meeting with, as BJ mentioned earlier, Bob Dylan one afternoon. And I loved reading the stories. I was looking it up. I'm sure you've told it many times, but if you wouldn't mind, some of our audience members might be hearing this for the first time. Could you share that story with us?
All right. Well, I was living in the West Village at the time, mid-70s, and I had a rehearsal. I was actively looking around for things to play, people to play with, and sitting in with people, doing some auditions. I had some success already by then. I had played with Ornette Coleman, and that was my first paying gig, and a 13-piece Cuban band. So I was doing all kinds of things. And this particular gig, kind of rehearsal, was in the Lower East Side that day. And I didn't really prepare anything in particular except just, walk out the door with my violin and my hair, which was like probably 4 feet long at the time. And I took the subway over to the East Side. And then as I got close to this place, and it was going to be a basement apartment directly across the street, this car pulled up. It seemed like it was following me for a while. And then he pulled up and prevented me from walking across the street and engaged me in conversation, like, "Hey, can I play that thing?" And I said, "Well, yeah." And he kept, wanting to talk to me and didn't want me to cross that street. And as I looked at him, I thought, well, this is certainly looking like a Bob Dylan to me. And as I talked to him more, it started to get the intuition that this was no Dylan lookalike. This was really Bob Dylan. And and he said, I really have to hear you play, So, and I said, well, I'm going to that rehearsal across the street. And he said, forget that rehearsal. I'm just, a couple blocks away. Would you please, jump in the car? We'll be at my rehearsal studio in a minute, And so I did, get in the car. His loft was just around the corner, and went inside, and it was just loaded with guitars and instruments everywhere. And just pretty much confirmed that I was with who I thought I was. And so I said, you know what? He just picked up the guitar, and he said, just play along, whatever you hear. And and he went from song to song to song. He did not play his big hits, in case I knew them. He played kind of obscure stuff, and he didn't give me a chart, and he didn't tell me what key he was in or what key changes or any chord changes. And then he didn't smile. He didn't say anything. And then he went to the piano, and upright piano, played a couple more things, and he kind of slammed the lid down and said, I got to go see a friend of mine play. You want to come? And I said, oh, sure. I would love to come. Back in the car, and we went around the corner. Now it was early evening, and the marquee said, Muddy Waters and band. And so we walked in kind of the back way, and he plopped me at a table and got me a drink, and then he said, I'll be back. And that was it. I thought I was just going to watch the band play and for the rest of the night. And he went up and sat in with Muddy Water, and the place went bananas. And then at the end of that one song, he went to the microphone and said, now I want to bring up my violinist.
Wow.
Talk about passing the audition with flying colors.
Yeah.
And what was your reaction when he said, I want to bring up my violinist?
Well, I had to scramble up to that stage and yank the violin out and get on the stage and play with Muddy Waters.
Man, talk about a huge leap. Yeah. So, Scarlet, you'd been listening to so much pop and jazz, and King Crimson was certainly an envelope-pushing band. Had Bob Dylan been part of the music that you were also infusing and listening to?
Oh, like I said, I had listened to him from high school on. Yes, he was. He was absolutely one of those influences from early days, very early days.
As he was, with so many people. So now you're working with Bob Dylan. You're getting ready to work on the Desire album. How about your friends and family? What was their reaction when you told them?
Well, number one, I didn't tell them, and if I had told them, they wouldn't be supportive, and they never were very supportive of my musical life.
I am sorry to hear that, but I'm glad that didn't dissuade you from continuing on. I mean,
no,
world, but
I got no financial support or moral support or anything.
Oh. Well, let's get back to starting to put songs together for the Desire album. Then, it sounds like Bob's way of working was sort of very off the cuff, almost loose. Was there any sort of plan in place, or was it just, here's this song, go?
Here's this song, go. I mean, if there's a plan, it's in his head, but he is not going to share that with you. It's less like, show us what you got, sink or swim. That's it.
Wow. Well, we're glad you swam.
Yeah, me too.
So you weren't, I mean, because again, I don't mean to come back and harp on things, not harp, but retread old ground, but growing up playing classical, studying, obviously you're a reader, you're a writer, but none of that came into play in this particular scene, right?
I have the ability to totally unplug and throw the classical out the window when I want to. It has zero influence on my playing, except for being in tune, of course.
Oh, it's a prime factor. So Bob didn't necessarily offer any input or suggestions as to what you're.
No, none.
And very freeing for you, really, to just, wow, here's this iconic artist, writer, singer, songwriter, poet, and he's sort of given me keys to the kingdom. Here we go. That had to feel felt wonderful. So there was the album Desire, followed by the Rolling Thunder Review Tour, and then there's a film of that as well, which is one heck of a legacy. I do want to play a bit of a song called Sara from the Desire album, so we can hear, because it's got this really sweet conversational tone between you and Mr. Dylan's vocals. Anything you'd like to share with us about the song before we play it?
Well, if I might go back to what you were saying about him not giving me any, I will say a couple times he made a point or two, literally 2 points. One was don't play over his vocal, or don't play in the same range often.
Got it.
Literally, as in playing the same notes at the same time. And the only other thing was when it came to a harmonica solo, I stopped dead in my tracks, and he stopped the recording. He said, "Why did you stop?" And I said, "Wow, I didn't want to play over your harmonic." And he said, "Well, let's start again, and when we get to that point, just keep playing."
That's interesting you should say that, Scarlett, because I was watching a couple of videos that you forwarded to me of a special. It was a tribute to John Hammond, who I believe you said is the gentleman who initially signed Bob Dylan.
We signed everybody at CBS.
Wow. Okay. And in the tribute, in the songs that you were playing, they're very stripped down. It's Bob, a bass player, drummer, and yourself. That caught my ear and my eye, that when he would start playing the harmonica, the violin continued with it. So you had this duplicity of tonalities going on together. So let's go ahead and play a bit of Sara so everybody can hear what we've been talking about.
All right, here we go. Wow. Yeah, that's really, really great. I love the counterpoint of the violin next to it, and it was just a lot of fun. It's wonderful. It just so it complements the song so well. I didn't pick out the parts before. I'm like, wow, that's just beautiful. So amazing.
I did make, in my opinion, I made one mistake on one note, and he wouldn't let me overdub it either.
Oh, as I was listening and we're talking about the process, and BJ was saying the interplay and so forth, did these albums come together pretty quickly then once you started actually laying the songs down in the studio?
Oh, like lightning, actually, yeah.
Wow.
Just lay down a track and
there was like nothing more than 3 takes, I don't think.
Wow. Well, that's fantastic. And the tour had to have been just one heck of a good time. Do you have any family-friendly stories about the Rolling Thunder Review Tour that you'd like to share with us? Tell us about that experience. That had to have been wonderful.
Wow, from the early part of opening up at Plymouth, the early leg of the tour was just phenomenal. He was so uplifting to me and encouraging, and he wanted me to succeed. It was obvious, and he gave me a little extra help at the first few shows because he could see that I was a bit terrified, and I got a lot more confidence as we went along, and I particularly liked being on the road with Joni Mitchell. By the way, later on, she was one of the highlights of it. It was very great to be on the same stage with Roger McGuinn as well.
Wow. Yeah, that's, again, some of my rock and folk heroes right there. And I imagine you were playing in front of some pretty large audiences, yes?
Yeah.
Thousands and thousands.
Yes. Yeah, I think I had my biggest audience prior to that was like 50 people.
From 50 to how many thousands would you guess you were playing?
At least 5,000. Yeah.
Wow.
That's a big difference. Yeah. And, you mentioned Joni Mitchell. Now, I believe recently you were involved also in a concert for Joni of some sort.
That's right. And she and I have remained close during many years, and I was invited to be the guest artist on her 75th birthday gala, which featured just about everybody from James Taylor to Seal to Emmylou Harris and Brandi Carlile, and it was just a love fest of Joni Mitchell, and I was very proud to be part of that.
No doubt, yeah, and a well-deserved love fest too, because
Yeah.
of amazing music and the output she gave us.
Yeah.
Did Roger McGuinn happen to be at that event there?
No, no, actually he wasn't.
But you did have some stage time with him though in the Rolling Thunder.
Oh, on Rolling Thunder, yes, I certainly did. And I think I played along with him on one of his songs from time to time.
Yeah. Okay, now I'm being the adoring fan.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I did listen to the Byrds and Joni in the early days as well. So I've heard, Ladies of Canyon and 8 Miles High and Turn, Turn, Turn and all that before that. I never dreamed I'd end up on the same stage with all of them.
And that, that to me, that's called validation. And it just makes you feel good that you chose the path you did. And it paid off in bigger dividends than you thought. I mean, the songs by the Byrds were, I guess we didn't call it playlists back then, but they were at the top of my AM radio list. I'll tell you that.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Spaceman, love that song, Turn, Turn, Turn. So beautiful. So this association then with Bob Dylan obviously opened up some doors for you. And I would imagine there was a lot of adjusting to that kind of new lifestyle. Following your time with Bob, where did your music take you, and what kind of adjustments did you have to make when you weren't quite in that frenetic sort of rock and roll, energy, or did that stay there?
Well, there were a lot of ups and downs after that. I was musically ready for that level, but I don't think I was emotionally ready. Because I had a lot more emotional work to do from childhood on to resolve, and so that kept, playing itself out in my life in not so great ways for a number of years. But still, I struggled to keep always keep coming back to the higher ground of music. Like, I got a call from David Johansen out of the blue, for example, to play on one of his albums, I think his solo album, and he's from the New York Dolls. That's the last kind of person I thought would also recruit me as well. Ended up playing for the Duke Ellington Orchestra as a soloist, which also I didn't seek. It just fell out of the blue on me. And the Love Orchestra with Barry White, I did. I found a wonderful violin teacher who was hip and who appreciated the fact that I was an improviser but could read well as well. So he brought me into some high-level recording session music, violin sessions, and so I recorded things like Little Mermaid for the film.
Awesome.
Yeah, I could just listen to you talk about this track record of yours because that's fantastic. Barry White, Love Unlimited Orchestra, all these folkies and these bands, like you say, that would have been the last place you might have expected to get a call for. One of the experiences of yours that I read about had to have been really unique, and this was you were played in East Germany behind the Iron Curtain before the wall came down. Now, what sort of impact did that experience have you, both from an artistic level and just from a human perspective? What was that like?
So that in that case, I got a call out of the blue from a director who wanted me to actually not be in the band, only to play a role in the video that went along with this beautiful song that this German star wrote. It's called, so like the role of the woman playing the violin was up on this beautiful mountaintop. So, and he had unlimited money, so he could financing. So he flew me out to Monument Valley, Utah, and I just played to the backtrack, really, which was already recorded. And the helicopter dropped us off on a butte, which was a spectacular thing to do. And then because the star and I hit it off, then he invited me to be part of his band in Germany. Huh. And tour. He didn't 10-piece, really heavy rock guy band. So I was, again, the first woman he had ever hired in the band, and probably the last anyway. But he got permission to go into East Germany, which is, permission was not granted to anybody at that time. But he was such a star that they gave him consideration, because they, of course, they analyzed the lyrics to make sure there was nothing, controversial that inspired people to want to get out of East Germany. And then we got a chance to go in. We drove in. The band was just weeping, and these grown guys, big heavy metal guys, were just weeping because of the experience of, being with the other half of their German soul that has had no ability to be free, to speak or do anything. And it was a devastating experience to see how that right-wing fascism can crush people to, and I saw how ultimately crushed these people on eastern side were. They could not even speak in a restaurant for fear that a neighbor would turn them in.
So I have to imagine the audience that you were playing for must have just gone wild.
You know what, they did, but they couldn't, because there was red guards in the audience all around, and they were not allowed to even go, "Wow!" No, they couldn't.
Mild wild. That's what an eye-opener for you. And thank you for sharing that with us, because what an eye-opener for us. Now, how far ahead of the actual dismantling of the wall was this? Did that happen soon after, or was this well before?
No, it was quite a number of years before. It was 1980, maybe 6, that I was there.
So when the news hit that the wall was coming down, that must have impacted you very directly.
Oh, I was thrilled for those people, because I met them and I talked to them, and I got really connected to some young guys and girls there that desperately wanted to get out.
And you've touched on another point, Scarlet, that is equally, in my opinion, as important as practicing your scales and playing in tune, being able to play the parts on a record, and that is getting along with people. So important in the world of music. Your experiences, if you had not been somebody that people would get along with, well, you probably wouldn't have been invited to East Germany by that band leader. May not even been made the trip up to the Butte. You know what I mean? So an important lesson for anybody watching who wants to pursue a career in music: make sure your career in humanity is equally as important to you. It goes a long way. All right, I'm going to stop preaching, but
you are 100% right.
Tell it. BJ, at the beginning, mentioned that you also have embraced a lot of altruistic causes: wildlife, environment, animal rights, planetary sustainability, world peace. When did that sort of show up in your career and become a driving force for you?
Oh, it showed up pretty early. I mean, I was doing a protest even before I did the whole Bob Dylan period of my life. And before 1975, after Kent State, the murders of students with live ammunition, I did a protest at my University of Southern Illinois, and I ended up getting arrested a number of other students and brought to jail. Of course, they let us out quickly because we were students and they didn't press charges. So, but I also flew to Washington, D.C. to protest the Vietnam War. And I was tear gassed in the street with millions of other people who were there to protest that. And other things led to, my conscious awareness of, the threat to endangered species and wildlife. That led me to volunteer and spend a lot of time at wildlife, exotic animal sanctuaries, and doing a lot of fundraising for them and free concerts. And
I have a brother who would love to sit down and have a heart to heart with you, because that's right up his alley, as really it should be everyone's, because it's so important that we maintain and sustain this planet that we live on.
oh yeah,
Another
I
guest.
mean, you got to feed baby birds and baby bobcats.
That's amazing. So now the two of the projects caught my eye, partly because of the name, but partly because of the content. One is called World Peace Violin, and the other is called Climate Music. And would you share those with us? Tell us what they're about and what you do with them.
Yeah, the Patrick McCollum Foundation I was introduced to by a musician friend, um, and she introduced me to Patrick, who created something called a World Peace Violin. And he wasn't a violin maker at all, but he was guided to make this incredible violin. And it is a peace foundation, so the actual violin is designated as the symbol of peace for that organization. So I played it a number of times, and I played it for the Nobel Peace Prize laureates gala in Atlanta, Georgia in 2015, and on International Day of Peace in Central Park in a couple of years. But the outreach of the Peace Foundation is quite vast, and it encompasses the world. And the other one, Climate Music Project, is out of San Francisco, and that's something I'm currently working on now. I'm going to combine some original music with top climate scientists' statistics on the trajectory of biodiversity and loss, and what is going to happen if we don't do anything, and what's going to happen trajectory if we do something good to help save them.
Well, these are amazing and noble causes, and you have had some experiences that not a whole lot of people can say, I've done this or I've been a part of this. So, I mean, we applaud you for that. And yet, while you're doing all of these things, you also put out your solo albums and maintain a really vibrant, active career as a musician. How many solo albums have you put out, and what kind of styles of music have you covered in those?
I kind of lost track of how many I've put a bunch. From my earliest album was actually rock fusion, way back in the day, and then I went into some mainstream rock ones, and then into Celtic and New Age. I did some New Age ones. One was called Journey of an Angel. And then into world music, which was the one I composed for the Animals, called Voice of the Animals.
Nice. Well, I'd like to, I mean, we're coming up on the hour. I do want to, you've got a new album coming out called All of Me. So I do want to play the title track for that just before we close. But if you wouldn't mind, maybe one more style of music on the violin, your choice, whatever you'd like to share with us. And then we'll talk about your latest album.
How about going back to the roots of classical, and just a short piece from on Arcangelo Corelli.
Awesome.
so on.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, the violin is such a mesmerizing, hauntingly beautiful instrument. Full violin, listen to all day and all night.
You know, I'm curious to know too. Is it okay if I ask a question?
Sure.
Awesome. Because you've had such an amazing just launch of the career. I mean, because it was just this amazing coming together of fates and fortunes and your natural talent and skills, and how it took you to where you are today. What do you feel like are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned, like when you first got starting out, and like how has that helped you to where you are today? Like what are some of those like things that you learned early in your career that you still are applying today?
I would say, in spite of all the big things I did and the many successful things, there were plenty of really disappointments. There were plenty of things that I wanted to happen that didn't happen. Things that happened that I felt were not fair, or being taken advantage of by a manager or an agent, or literally getting ripped off for your publishing rights and stuff like that. I mean, so those things were really hard to keep going and to go, wow, maybe I should give this this line of work up, go to something a little more fair. So anyway, but I think that just learning how to roll with the punches, as well, that great keyboard player says, and just picking yourself up and getting over the disappointments and having that perseverance to say music, your goal in the future is worth keeping your eye on the future.
Wow, that's such an epiphany sometimes that not a lot of people get to experience that. And I mean, it sounds like you've despite some of these hard experiences that you've had in addition to the successes. I mean, from what I'm hearing, you mean going to protests and everything, that terrifies me. So that in my mind says you're fearless to be able to do what you do and stand up for what you believe in. But also, I had no idea how resilient you've had to been in your whole career, and just to get to where you are, and the many successes that you're enjoying, and you're sharing your music with the world right now. That's an amazing story of resilience, and I thank you for sharing that. That's awesome.
Welcome. It really is. Again, very inspirational for anybody watching. Because, as you say, the music business is definitely a hard knock business. You've got to want to keep going. And you did, and you have, and you're continuing to. And you put out an album last April called All of Me. And Scarlet, when I heard the title track, I said, all right, she's just laying it on the line here. She's saying, this is all of me. This is who I am. And if you wouldn't mind, just share a little bit of the inspiration for the album, then we'll play the title track, All of Me.
Okay, well, after being an instrumentalist my whole life, I really had a big kind of fear of being a lead singer. I just never pursued it, didn't want to pursue it, and had a real emotional block about it, actually. And on the other hand, I thought, well, at some point, I had so many stories I wanted to express, but I couldn't express them now as an instrumentalist. So I came to a wall where it's like, okay, well, I think it's time to get over this, this wall of resistance of singing. And the story became more important. And if somebody didn't like my voice, so what? So I think I didn't have voice lessons, and I just said, it's time to sing.
Time to go for it. And there's another notable quote: if somebody doesn't like my voice, so what? So this song just comes out of the gate rocking. So BJ, why don't we go ahead and play that title track, All of Me.
Here we go.
Rocking, and it evoked the blues torch burning singers. Yeah, it's just that's awesome. Scarlett, I want to thank you for joining us this afternoon. It's been great. It's been fun, educational, musical, and all that rolled into one. So, on behalf of the Museum of Making Music, thank you, and gosh, continued success with all these endeavors you're working on.
Continued success to you guys and to the museum, okay? Yeah. I'm trying to integrate my animal songs, my animal compositions for the wolf, the jaguar, the eagle, and the wild horse into that um, uh, platform that they're going to be giving me visually with all the statistics from the climate scientists on the trajectory of where some of these ecosystems are heading in the negative and the positive.
Mm.
And then my music is going to go over those images and statistics.
Awesome, awesome. Sorry, I for everyone that was watching, I had my mic muted in the stream. You got Bill and Scarlett could still hear me, but they could not. I had mentioned Scarlett's going to be doing some climate change awareness music project. So go check that out at climatemusic.org. If you want to check out more of Scarlett's career and her music and what she's up to, go to scarlettriveramusic.com. If you want to find out what's going on with the museum, I'm about to tell you. In fact, what have we got coming up? Let's see. February 19th, next week, next Friday, we have Ralph Grierson, pianist, keyboardist. He's worked with John Williams and many, many others. Disney, I think he recorded parts of Fantasia 2000. He'll be joining us as our special guest next week on Mom at Home at 2 p.m. Pacific time. And then to round out the month, we have Mr. Ed Rossetti, clinician, educator, author, and he's done many programs at the Museum of Making Music, our summer music camp series for students he's been a part of. And he's going to tell us what it's like to be in many of these roles that he's performed over his career on February 26th at 2 p.m. So we invite you to come back each week and check out our next guest. We have so many wonderful guests. That's what makes this so much fun, is just meeting all of these wonderful artists and musicians who have a shared passion for music and music making. In addition, like Scarlett, many other passions that she has pursued in her life and making a difference. So again, thank you, Scarlett. Thank you, Mr. Bill. Thank you, everyone who's out there watching today. All of you. I see all the wonderful comments. Richie Strell from Facebook says, legendary. Nancy Telford says, your voice is so real, Scarlett. So wonderful, wonderful compliments. I think everybody had a great time today. Until then, visit our website if you want to see what else is going on. We are finishing up our renovation at the Museum of Making Music, so stay tuned there. Find out more at museumofmakingmusic.org to learn more about when we're going to opening up to the public. We'll keep you informed at that spot. And if you want to view the entire Mom at Home calendar, you can visit our website and we'll share all of the dates there with you. Anyway, until then, everyone, take care and have a wonderful rest of your week.